everybody. Welcome to the Motion Design Hotline. Evan Abrams here, back as usual with our other host, Kyle Hamrick. Kyle, we're in a couple of tiles, so you know what that means.
That's true. I'm just now remembering that I thought of some shenanigans that we should do where we set up like a tiling grid of us in the broadcast software, but we didn't do that, so instead I'm just going to talk about it briefly.
Yeah.
Imagine it. It'll be probably cooler anyway.
Do we have any other bits that we want to tell people to imagine while we're here?
You can imagine a really hilarious bit right here. We'll just pause for about 20 seconds.
Perfect. Well, we can't pause for too long because we actually do have a lot of stuff. So this
Too
episode...
much, probably.
Yes. As usual, we've prepared too many things. This week... Tiles and tribulations. Our first question from the chat: what is a tribulation? It's a problem, or like an ordeal, like something you suffer through. And as you viewers, Umacorn, Misty, Alejandro will now be suffering through the remainder of this program. Well, we hope not. We hope you enjoy it. But we're going to torture.
We're eventually going to run out of synonyms for problems, and then we're going to be the ones having tribulations coming up with titles. But
exactly, that's how it goes. That is our burden. But today we're going to be addressing, as we've been doing, kind of in a bit of a series, right? We've been talking about different arrays, different repetitions of things, ways to repeat stuff inside After Effects. We're trying to help you be lazier. We're trying to help you do less work so you can make more interesting things with less effort. And so today is going to be no exception. Let's just run down, Kyle. Let's jump over to your screen real quick. And
okay.
Yeah, we're mixing it up. So you can have a look at some of the things that we're going to be making. And hopefully
I'll just go ahead and run all of these.
Yeah, all at once. Nothing bad can happen.
Yeah. So two of these are based very heavily on the effect CC Hextile. And then here on the right, we have a responsive grid setup that I built using some fairly simple expressions. It's a little more about thinking than coding here. We're gonna put that one last because we probably have too much. And arguably, this one is probably more at home in the grid episode than a tiles episode. But this is what I have to offer today, because straight up and down grids gets a little boring. So, being able to do Hextile type stuff is good times.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever been to a modern bathroom, you know that that's true. So
I have not, but I'm told that that's the case.
Okay. Well, I hope you get there eventually. So here's what I've got for you. We've got this tile. We have tiles of Kyle's that we'll be enjoying. So, Kyle, you were gracious enough to send all of these beautiful images of yourself so that we could enjoy. And then it pulls out to a kind of meta image. It's hard to tell, but that is actually also Kyle. So you can tell because of his signature look here with his beard and his eyes.
Yep. Looks just like me.
Yep. And then it dissolves into the greatest fashion brand, KYLE. It's like Donna Karan, New York, but this. So we'll be examining how to produce this type of thing, but we're going to start with some kind of more basic tiling things, and then sort of making that even more sophisticated as we keep adding sort of more and more things to it, right? There's no end to what you can do, but it all begins fairly simply, right? There's not like a huge difficulty thing here. But step one, if we're going to do any tiles, Kyle, to do these tiles, we must first make tiles, right? Which means we need some...
And you need to choose a style.
Right. It doesn't take... It'll take a little while.
Perhaps a bit of guile.
Oh, these puns you will revile. Let us continue with these. So... here are just some examples of real kind of quick and dirty type of tiles. So here, for example, this is just a radial, it's a circle that just gets big and then big and then big some more, right? And to do this, if you're interested in sort of copying how this works, all you need to do is produce one circle that gets big and big and big. I'm using its scale. And then you can just duplicate that and shift it over. So you can grab that, duplicate it, move it, and then change its color. And then you get the one that's on top of it as it gets big and big and big. And then eventually you've got all of them going. So did 4 of those. Duplicate those, shift them ahead in time. And here's the important part. And we're going to come back to this a bunch. Brooke, we're glad they makes you smiles. So that's what we like to hear. Okay. Kyle, I hope you're thinking about other words that rhyme with tiles.
No, I completely left that behind.
Okay, thank goodness. Okay. Well, you'll still see it for miles. And so all we did was offset these in time. And the important thing with this, or at least with these tiles, is that the looping period of these is 4 seconds. So this 4-second band, if I move it over here, we get a flawless loop. And that's just because of the timing that it takes to run through all of these things, that we end up with a seamless loop at 4 seconds. Therefore, if we do other things in permutations, as long as we keep that 4-second period in mind, we'll be fine. I'll just, have a look at this one. This one's looping period is going to be 3 seconds, right? Because all of the stuff resolves within 3 seconds. So you see as we deploy that places, that'll be stuff. We did a similar thing here where this is just a bunch of this kind of bean shape, this long rectangle that slides in, and I'm just rotating it a whole bunch of times and reusing it and rotating it, right? So far, so boring, right, Kyle? It's not...
Yeah, I'm on the verge of falling asleep here.
Okay. Oh boy, I better get more exciting. This is the great thing about tiles, though. Like, from something really simple, it makes things that are really interesting and complex through repetition and turning and changing. So
you do have to be a little thoughtful about your edges, because obviously those are going to be
right.
touching each other. But
yeah. So for example, in this, the tile is cut off here, so it's got these little nubs that are going to be pushing in. So if you do want a kind of geometric interaction with the edges, you got to plan that out. Now, let's go make use of it. Enough blathering and blithering. Let's make use of this. So I'm going to make a square composition, but it can be whatever you want, whatever size. Ooh, beach ball. What are you doing here?
We need some tiles of beach balls.
I know.
There we go.
So this is a square. The tiles are square. My tiles are 200 by 200 pixels. And I have gone ahead and marked, at least on this one. You know what? Let's start with the radial circles. Maybe that'll be a better one. So what I want to do is first retime this into a loop. So if I go... So if we go to here in Comp 1, we're going to go Layer, Time. We're going to enable time remapping. I'm going to set a keyframe here. I'm going to enter into that layer. I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to tab back to Comp 1. I'm going to set another keyframe on the time remapping. And I'm just going to delete the first and last of those time remaps, because this is the interesting segment to me. Hold down Alt, click on this. Loop out. Type in loop out. Loop out. You got to loop out. And then if I shift those keyframes to the start, we just now have constant looping. Phase 1 done. We did it. Okay. So we are now going to take this object, right? And I'm going to hit A to move its anchor point to 0, 0, get it up in the corner. This is a personal preference for me, but I like to zero out the position of the anchor point, and that'll stick the tile up in the top corner, for example.
Because you're going to have to do a little bit of math, and that makes it easier.
Yeah, math is hard, and I don't like it. That's not true. I love math. I don't know who I'm trying to big dog out here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go transform, fit to comp. Now, this has scaled it up to be the total size of the comp. Then, if I come up into the scale, and let's say I want like a 10 by 10 grid, I'm going to divide this by 10. And now I know that this takes up 1/10 of the total size. Math isn't hard when you bend it to your will.
Yeah. Pro tip, let After Effects do the math for you.
Exactly. You'll never fear math again when the computer does the work. So now I'm going to type in Repetile. And if you ever wonder if the creators of After Effects are also interested in word jokes, look no further than the CC Repetile.
And all of the code names for the beta versions.
That's true. Yeah, it's kind of synonymous with this stuff. So now I'm going to expand to the right, and I'm going to have to expand, I believe, 1800 pixels to fill all the way across. And then similarly down, I'm going to go down 1800. Now I've created a wall of all the exact same thing. We've nailed it. It's perfect. There's nothing else to do at this point. And if this is as far as you need to go, you've done it. You've done a basic tiling grid of this. However, there are a lot of different ways that it can repeat. And Kyle, before we kick it over to a more interesting form of tiling, I'm going to take our radial circles and I'm going to replace it with some passing shapes. Which you
Please
can
do.
Please, and quickly. And all I'm doing is I'm holding down Option and dragging the new thing onto that. So you grab the thing, you drag it down, you replace the thing, and things are going to be a little bit wackier in here because I need to get basically the time remapping to go from the right place. So that is going to...
you didn't set them up to be identical? How dare you?
I know, I beefed it so bad. But so this one goes from 1 second to 5 seconds. So I'm just going to come in here and I'll just type that in manually. 1 to 5. So now we can enjoy this happening over and over and over again. Now, what's important is that this has a kind of linearness to it, right? It's not radiating from the center. So when I come into the effect and I change the tiling option to, say, checker flip H, we get a different way of seeing this. Or maybe we're going to go with a rosette. So that makes kind of an interesting spiralating pattern. Or maybe you want a checker 180-degree flip. So you can see the kind of cool patterns just by changing this thing here. And if you want random, we can do that too. So that can happen. But yeah, that's basic tiling for you, right? You must make an interesting tile and then repeat it a bunch of times. And sometimes you just have to remix and play around and figure out what works. You could, I don't want to say waste your whole day doing this, but you could enjoy your whole day doing this, just going through the different options. And especially because the different things you feed into the system are going to change the outputs that come from it. So, Kyle, I think we nailed it with some basic tiling.
What's this Wii stuff?
Yeah, that's true.
I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, it's true. I don't want to inundate you or indict you as also a basic person. So we'll just my apologies for shaming you with basicness. But obviously, things that are orthogonal, yawn. What else? What other forms of grid or tile can we make happen here?
So I feel like my examples are a little bit the counterpoint to yours because you made one interesting thing and then let the effect do the layout. Mm-hmm. And I think in my examples, I'm relying on the tiling effect to do a lot of the actual look. So I'm going to just dive in a little bit and kind of show how CC Hextile works, and then we can check out my examples. So one thing that's interesting, and I'd be curious, I'm trying to remember if Repetile does the same. So CC Hextile, I have it here placed on an adjustment layer. And even though that adjustment layer is the size of the whole comp, it only works within what's visible. So right now, this little square is all that's on. I also have a blue background that fills the whole thing, okay? But just kind of be mindful of that. So when I turn on CC Hextile, it only works within that little square right now. So, it's sort of interesting, but maybe what you want, maybe not. Whereas if I turn on this background, now it's going to apply across the whole comp. I feel like Repetile specifically works off the layer boundaries because then you're expanding it accordingly. So I thought this was kind of an interesting functionality here.
You also run into some very interesting stuff. So if you were to use Repetile on an adjustment layer, keep in mind those anti-aliased pixels around the edge can cause some unpleasant tearing.
Yeah.
Not the advised way to use that. But
not unlike the entire episode we did on tearing, which you can watch now at motiondesignhotline.com.
Natural segues. Crushing
Yep.
it. This is good.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of point out that distinction there. If you're using this on an adjustment layer, which might be common, that you do need to kind of be mindful about what, where the alpha of the rest of your comp is, because if it doesn't fill it up, you're going to get different behavior there. Of course, you could put this on that square, but I didn't think that was as interesting for this thing. So, most basically, you can just fill up the radius, and you can see what it's doing here. You get hexes of tiles, and I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but you do get the breaks of the hexagon shapes, which may or may not be what you want. And so if you don't want that, you'll actually notice in my other comps, I eyedroppered the background color of the composition with that, with some, the same color. So if you don't want that to be visible, it's just the way that the effect works. It always makes those cuts. You could add a minimax effect if you wanted to work around this and set that to alpha in color, and then just go 1 pixel, and that'll make it disappear. You'll still run into edges if things exceed the radius here. Like you'll see how these start kind of clipping into the hexagon shapes. But so it's just sort of an interesting functionality. But something that's cool about this is that you get a lot of control over moving and rotating these tiles. So you can have the object locked there, or you can have it move with your movement of the center property here. So you kind of notice those two different behaviors there, so you can do some interesting things. And let's get this back. You can, of course, rotate these, which enables a lot of cool stuff, because you're still coming from one central version of the thing. So, you could make a little pre-comp, kind of like Evan did here, and tile it out like this. Rotating it might be interesting to figure out how to make the edges all match, but this is sort of why I leaned into having the effect sort of doing a lot of the actual work. You'll see that my other compositions are actually very simple, and it's just the Hextile doing a lot of the stuff here. And then, like Repetile, you do have some other ways to work with this. They don't show up as much with a simple shape like this, but you'll kind of see it in the other comps, where you can tile, fold aligned, or fold seamlessly. And then the cool part that I really like is the smearing property that kind of scales things in towards the center or out from it. Right. And so this was kind of our, when we were playing around with ideas for this, this is where we landed on the fly eye kind of thing. And in fact, I think I'll jump over to that right now and show you just how simple this is. This is the comp right here that makes that sort of robotic fly eye, and the rest is all CC Hextile.
Right, so this is all just little shape layers, stuff moving around, basic. Hopefully people have been tuning in for the kind of the Animation 201, 101 series. So you got a firm animation foundation to build off of. But yeah, it's all black and white. It's, it's not much to write home about yet.
Yeah, all black and white. I thought it'd be a little easier to control the colors with a tritone effect, which is what I did here on this adjustment layer. So there's a tritone effect to color it. There's a little bit of glow on one of these layers just to kind of stylize it. And then there's our Hextile, and then a little bit of radial blur and some vignetting just for look. But really what's going on here is there's just a little bit of change in the radius, and then occasionally I'm kind of rotating it around. But honestly, this one came together really fast. You just, for something like this, which I don't know how often you'd need, but I kind of leaned into the hexagonal cuts there, because I thought that was part of the style. And it's kind of finding the right size of things underneath this to get the look you're after. But the basic shapes can be quite simple, and you can do some, fairly interesting stuff. One thing about this smearing is that when you start offsetting the position of where the middle of the effect is, you get some interesting kind of cascading, progressive offset kind of stuff here. Oh, yeah. And so you could make, I think without too much trouble, you could make some interesting, say, transitions using an effect like this. Just put a simple shape or a couple shapes to kind of create some, more dynamic, interesting stuff down here. And you could do some interesting, if you use black and white, you can create a transition that can be a matte, or it could drive some other effects, as we've been showing you in, other shows here.
Yeah, no, that's man, that's incredible. I love this. Like, I don't know, it seems so much more complex, right? Than than its parts are. And you could even obviously that's getting like a scrolling type of feel as it's going by. You could then like counter that with just like a transform effect on top of that, and so it would appear to do those like growing and changing things, but like stay in the same place. Anyway, we're
right, and I kind of leaned into that for this one, for the text one. Let's again just kind of look at what I have going on underneath here. I did that same black and white. It was just kind of easier to work with that way. So look at this super complex animation here. As you can see, the CC Hextile is doing like all the work here. And as you can see from the keyframes on that yellow layer there, and there's a couple instances where I stacked a second copy of Hextile, but I'm changing the radius of the hex, and I'm rotating quite a bit more in this one. But like the base stuff is not that much, but a lot of times I am like specifically animating moving the tile center this way and moving the thing this way, so that you can get some more sort of interesting compositions here. That right there, that little tile slide off, that's a good example of that. And then if you position things right, you can get these interesting kaleidoscopic effects using this as well. So I honestly, this was an effect I hadn't used too much, and so I thought it was a fun thing to just be able to kind of lean into here and really see how much neat stuff you could kind of do with just kind of playing around with the properties of one effect, which is a thing I'm a big fan of. Get in here and find some of those things that you don't touch that often, and you might kind of have a hidden gem that you've been overlooking.
And also, like, if people are like, man, there's so many, keyframes and stuff, you can download and dissect all of these keyframes if you like. MotionDesignHotline.com. So there's all of the project files you kind of see us work on and create here. So you get to enjoy all those, because obviously we can't get microscopic on all of it. I would love, though, if you could dive into like just some of the keyframes for this like frenetic and staccato type of movement, which I know is very very hot right now that people enjoy.
So hot right now. Yeah. On the layer or on the Hextile?
I think that I guess all the ones on the yellow layer there that are kind of bouncing around quite a lot.
So let's see if we find a good. There's a couple spots like this where I specifically kind of leaned in to do some little flash frames and kind of not quite match cuts, but sort of. Let's see. You can see there's a decent amount of hold keyframes in here, both to hang on to certain values and then occasionally to do little pops like that. Here's a spot where we get that. So I did a couple of these little scale pops, and I'm utilizing a directional blur on this, so that, remember, I'm using tritone up here. So that means anything that's gray is going to get colored, whatever our midtones color is. So I sort of like used a blur to create somewhere between the black and white here, just to give, color variety. So a lot of this is just like, the word has some scale keyframes on it. It pops bigger here, and then it holds that for a couple frames, and then it, I think this may have been sort of a happy accident. What's changing here? This is the second version of Hextile. I won't lie. There are definitely some happy accidents that happened in here as I was going through. I had a general idea of what I wanted to make, But sometimes just here you go. It's this one. I'm changing the render style here. You know, so again, I think if you have kind of a general idea of what you're after, and then sometimes you just need like a couple frames of cool nonsense to kind of break it up. It doesn't always have to be something that's super intentional. You kind of work into the feel of it, and in this case, being very poppy and staccato kind of made sense. We have sort of some slow in, and then a little bit of a breath, and then a couple times where we kind of like hit you with stuff, and then you kind of step back again. So kind of trying to create some contrast in timing to create visual interest.
Yeah, it's a lot more of the, I don't know, say painterly, or just you got to play around with the stuff, to to get it to do the thing. It's the kind of thing that you can't do as much by numbers. I don't know. I find that to be, that's when things are like working. when you're actually stumbling onto something instead of just stumbling. That's the important part.
Yeah, this one was very much working by feel. I kind of found like a handful of key looks that I liked, and then I kind of spaced those out and figured out how I would kind of move between those.
Sweet.
Is maybe the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, and it ends up looking great. So that's what we end up with.
Any other questions on this, or should we hop into your?
Oh yeah, that's true. Your
tiles of Kyles.
If people have trubs, if they have questions, let us know. Let us know in the comments. We'll try to pause and get into those. If there's anything vexing you, if you're feeling tribulated, that's not a word, but anyway,
it just became one.
Yeah, if you're feeling tribulated, maybe it is a word. I don't know. Take it up with the dictionary. Anyway, so
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. I made, Kyle, a very special ode to my co-host here. Yeah, Trubs. Mm-hmm. if you're having Trubs. So we've got Tiles of Kyles. Now, this whole thing, the way this whole thing works, there's not a lot of like animation happening, right? Because these are all static elements. What's changing is which of them we see and where. So that's the big thing. And so this all relies on a type of mapping. So we're gonna note. Oh, Kyle's audio is very loud.
I was about to let you know. Okay. Maybe I'll whisper until we get that figured out.
Yeah, you have an
ASMR. I'll go NPR mode.
Yeah. You have an ASMR time. I'm gonna bump you down a couple of decibels, and we'll see if that fixes anything. I will not be going ASMR mode. So in this thing, I'm going to be going Gilbert Gottfried mode. So in this one, we have all these Kyles. That's pretty good. So like I say, this is just a big comp that I'm scaling up and down. So let's get inside there and see what is happening in here. And here you go. You got many, many little Kyles, and we are determining where the Kyles should be. So if we dip into, I'll just solo some of these layers here, and you can see this is just that repetiled image of Kyle, right? And if we come into the effects, we got the repetile going on.
We're going to call it Repetile for the rest of this
right. So,
demo.
So we're using the Repetile effect here, and that is producing all of these duplicates of this layer, and then I'm just using a tint to remap the black and white values. Now, how do we get it to show up or not show up in different places? Well, that's all down to track mats. You could use various things to cause this kind of track matting, but the simplest thing is, back in the day, what we would have to do is have one map per layer. And we've done that here because we actually need 5 unique maps. So I've got the brightest of Kyles. I've got some bright-ish Kyles. We've got some mid Kyles here, which, I don't know, that's kind of a dapper Sherlockian, so I don't know, maybe not. But then we've got dark Kyle here, so this is darkish Kyle. And then finally darkest Kyle. This is the darkest of Kyles. Now, doesn't show up all the time, but there you have it. This is the darkest of Kyles. Now, all of these, to make my life a little bit easier, I just cropped down to 500 by 500 pixel images. Is it weird that I'm cutting my co-host's wife out of a lot of photos? No.
No.
No, this is normal.
She didn't sign up to be a host of this show.
You know, that's
she hasn't
true.
signed a release.
Yeah, that's right. We couldn't use her image if we wanted to. So the way a lot of this works, though, is I need maps. So these things all need a map to look at, and so I created these. This is our map. So this is just a composition. It's full of a solid back here, which is a fractal. The fractal's doing fractal things back here. All I'm doing is I'm animating its evolution to have a good time. And then over top of it, and this is a real critical part of the infrastructure here, I have an adjustment layer. And upon this is a mosaic. And the mosaic is breaking this up into 24 by 24 squares. Evan, 24 by 24 squares? What are you talking about, 24 by 24 squares? Well, that's because in here we also have 24 by 24 squares. So it's going to line up one for one. If we're trying to break this up into squares, let's do it. Let's break it up into squares. And so in here, on the back, I've got a fractal. And then just in between these things, I've got this photo of Kyle that shows up, right? We're just cross-dissolving using some opacity to fade into a photo of Kyle. And then we are fading that off, and then we're fading back on a couple of layers, a dark solid and these letters, and that's it. And so we come into here. And of course, yeah, we could be using videos instead of photos, right? This could be a video layer, right? This could all be just one video surreptitiously taken of Kyle outside of his house, and that would be totally normal to use in here. But
you'd have to be a lot more mindful of timing, though.
Exactly.
That's an advantage of photos, is that you can kind of do whatever you want and not worry about time.
Well, the other thing is that so much of the quality is going to get degraded as well.
Yeah.
So if this were video and you were like moving around, a lot of these mid gray values would be bouncing all over the place. But the other thing that I did,
messy,
yeah, and to try to kind of clamp on that is I put a levels down on here, and the levels, I was really just using it to try to get a sense of, the high and low values of our histogram. And sometimes you want to just kind of pinch this in, but the main way that I'm moderating this is through the posterize effect. And I've got it set to 5 levels. 5. Important number. Important number call out. Because,
why is that important, I wonder?
Okay, so we got 5 levels of posterize, which is giving us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different bands. And that is going to correspond to our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brightest, brightish, mid, darkest kind of thing, right? I need one for each. So from these maps, right, we've ended up with, it's been posterized, and then I posterized the time because I don't need this updating all the time. It's fine if it's 8 frames a second. That's going to give us the kind of chunkified situation we want.
Honestly, again, it would probably feel a little too messy and chaotic if you didn't kind of chunkify the time.
I think so. But anyway,
yeah.
Let's go back to the tiles of Kyle's, right? So how is this working? Well, with each of these, map 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are all just duplicates of that same composition. But what's changed about them is I've used the extract effect. Now, if you're not familiar with the extract effect, let me show you here. The extract effect gives us this kind of bar down here and a histogram. And we're just saying, what are we accepting? And so I've dialed this in to only accept the dark parts down here, and then map
extract is, sorry to interrupt, for you Photoshop folks who are sad that the blend if doesn't exist in After Effects, the extract effect is about as close as we get.
Yeah. Well, it's
pretty
almost
close to the same functionality.
Well, yeah, and it's even got the same UI in it, so there's that. So this is great if you need to extract like things that can be really delineated by channel, which in case of luminance, you see these 5 boop, 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 bars. So that's working perfectly. So I've basically gone through and I've created, one holdout for each of those. And then I've just had those grids look at that. Now, on top of that, I put a little adjustment layer with a grid over top of everything just to put a couple of pixel border between it. But the end result is this thing that seems to arrange itself almost into these different things. Now, of course, these could be little emoji. These could be little video clips. These could be, different photos. One of the things, Kyle, that was the hardest for this, I'll be honest, was putting them in the correct order from brightest to darkest. Now, obviously, they're being retinted, right? So I'm tinting them down. So I'm tinting the darkest to the darker values of our excellent brand, and the brightest are going to the brighter values of our excellent brand. But one thing that actually helped, so if you're going to do this with other photos, then I would recommend creating a composition. I tinted them all just to see which is darkest. And then we go window and we get our lumetri.
So you could focus on the luminance values and not the colors themselves.
That's true. Yeah, you could always come down here and say, like, just give me some of those things. But the tint is really just is stripping away all the color. And I wonder if I didn't have the tint, if this would be. It doesn't change that much. But
yeah.
What's great here is in the scopes, you can kind of see as I drag one of them around, you can see some of those little bits in the scope are shifting as well. And I've got them arranged tallest to shortest basically over here, which is telling me the darkest to lightest situation. Now, some of these are pretty similar in the mid zone. So we've got Zombie Kyle, we've got Detective Kyle, we've got Nerd Kyle, we've got Dapper Evening Kyle, we have Hillbilly Kyle, strange hillbilly phase that everyone went through. So it's we have all the seasons of Kyle represented out here, I guess, which is great. Love these types of things. Don't look into Evan's past social media stuff. But this will help you get them in an order that you want, and then you can remap them. And maybe you want to use them a little bit flatter, like you might use them without recoloring them, right? If you wanted to do kind of a photo wall that then zooms out and it looks like one big photo. So we did 5 levels, right? You could do 8, you could do 12. Just remember that as you add more and more complexity, you're adding more and more of these maps that you need to, like 1-to-1, one for each.
And I can see that you're already taking some performance hits there. I see some yellow in your composition profiler column there.
Yeah, we're at 114 millisecond contribution from some of these. Like it is not an insubstantial amount of work on these, and that's because Repetile, and people might not know this, but so because this is 500 by 500 pixels. And then that has been shrunk. I scaled it up. It's actually expanding by 10,000 pixels in either direction. So I probably should have made tinier pictures to start with, or pre-compose these into tinier comps, right? Like these don't need to be that many pixels. I'm doing too many pixels. Speaking of doing too many pixels, Kyle, I must talk about retiming.
You must.
Yes.
Okay. I insist upon
it. So going back to our original basic wall of tiles, right? And now we've used a map to say what tiles can be seen where. Well, let's take that idea, let's move it into another dimension, the temporal dimension.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly.
Some might call it the 4th dimension.
Yeah, exactly. They might. That's and you're totally within your rights to say those things. Like a hot dog is a sandwich. You can say that too if you want.
It is, by the way.
Yeah, it's in the taxonomy of sandwiches. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, right, is the map is going to change a lot of how this works. So if we go back to what we said, you've got your Repetile going on, right? You've got a certain number of tiles going across and down. And so therefore you must have a map that aligns with that. So we've got here just a gradient ramp and a mosaic limiting us to 10 by 10. I'm using sharp colors on here, and you might even drop a levels on top of this just so you can kind of see the histogram that's going on. You might even like pinch this in so you get total darkness up here. Yeah, we're teaching life lessons around here, definitely.
That's really the secret aim of this show.
Yeah. No one would give us no one would allow us to do an advice show, so we do this show instead.
Yeah. And life hotline, just that sounds like a whole different thing. It sounds kind of lame.
Yeah. Well, it's not. We're fielding customer complaints from the cereal all day long, so it's kind of rough. It's just a mixture of complaints about the board game life and the cereal life all day over there. It was a bad call.
But that could be a workable concept, though. Let's talk about this after the show.
Yeah. Put it next to the Medea play that we were going to do. Viewers, you work out what we were going to do with that. So, right, you've got a grid. The grid matches, like Medea matches with Medea, and it's overlaid each other. So that means we could then use an adjustment layer that's going to use time displacement. So the time displacement effect, look at the map, right, that will tell us how far. And you've probably seen us use time displacement on here a bunch. The idea is that, back and forth over time, in this case, a maximum displacement of 2 seconds, the gray, 50% gray values will be displaced not at all. The white values will be pushed in time. The pixels that are over the dark values will be pushed in the other direction. Oh, Kyle, I'm so full of burps.
Yeah. Displacement is already abstract enough of a concept where you're using white and black to, move things, say, vertically. And then when you start doing that in time, it's like an additional level of abstraction on there. So I can see why it's a little tricky to wrap your head around sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Well, Val, I'm glad that you're enjoying our excellent creative idea.
We really just make this show for Val, I think.
Exactly, yes. It's a narrow casting. But the time displacement, right? So we're pushing these pixels in time, we're pushing those pixels in time. The result is, let's say that I'm going to change this to just repeat. So not, without time displacement, it looks like this.
Which is okay.
Yeah. With time displacement, it starts to look like this, and we get this cascade effect that runs over the thing. Because again, remember, it's like we're inducing movement across from one corner to the other. To really kind of exemplify what we're talking about here, let's just change the map, right? We can just take this map and let's change it from a linear to a radial ramp, and we'll go like that. So now let's see what air we wrought on here. And you can see that that's changed a lot how it's going, right? I'm going to turn off sharp colors real quick, and we'll see if I can just manipulate this grid to be more centered. Maybe it'll never get perfectly centered, but that's the idea here, is that we're able to cause incredible changes, and we don't even need to use a gradient. So I'm using a gradient here just for fun. I could use our old friend Fractal Noise. It's back.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not even animating the map at this point.
Well, all right, I've got an example of the animated map. Now, just remember, though, the animation is being caused by the loop that's going through, this 4-second loop. Call back. 4-second loop. So that means that as I'm remapping this thing, it's still being a seamless loop. It's still looping nicely through this thing as a looping background. If I were to start to animate the fractal noise, and I'll just rack this a little bit, and you'll start to see how that goes through the whole thing. Let me go to, because I've got a comp of that, evolving fractal. Here it is. So you'll kind of see how chaotic this becomes, because we're basically inducing two types of movement or two types of animation over top of each other at the same time, right? So there's the natural flow of animation that wants to move at a steady rate, and then we're accelerating and decelerating that by changing the fractal and shifting it in time. So you do end up with something that's very interesting, right? We're getting this really nice kind of popping type of sensation. So thumbs up for that, r/popping. And don't type that in. You know what? If you already know what you're doing, then you've already found it. So, so bubbles is kind of what it seems like. Now, if I was going to say, let's do some more math. Okay. let's do some more math real quick.
I'm on board.
Okay. Yeah. Kyle, can I interest you in some more math? So, if we recall, this tile has a very specific cadence to it, right? 1 second at a time, or one beat at a time. Well, yeah, literally 1 second at a time. new circle every 1 second. Ba-bum, 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 right? So let's go back to the synchronized tile here. Remember, we have this maximum displacement to play with, and we have within, in this case, a fractal and a mosaic and a posterize, 4 different sort of bands in here that we can clamp on, right? So we've got this thing kind of synced up that it's going like bop, 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 like that. Well, what happens if I start to change this? Let's cut this in half to 2. Bop, 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 bop. So it's changing. Let's change it to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Bloop, 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 bloop. So remember, the furthest something can be is +1. The least something can be is -1 second. If this is a middle number, like 0.5, right? Now everything is like off by half. And maybe if you had like, say 3.33, right? You're going to get even different cadences of this stuff. So it's really important to kind of work your maths out. And also remember that maximum displacement is, in this case, let's say it's 4 up and 4 down. And the map here is cutting it into 4. So that means across that thing, we're actually cutting, that span of 8 things, right, of 8 seconds from -4 to +4. So that means there's a difference of 2 all the way through. If I were to posterize this not 4 but 8, not 89, what would that even do, right? So this is another way that you can control how far each of the squares is delineated from each other. And even if you do, let's do a middle number like a 3, right? Check this out. It's all lined up on top of each other. Mm-hmm. So you get these kind of oopsie doodles that can occur. If we solo this, it's still like this. Like, oh, that should not be, right? But it's a weird thing of the math where you can end up with these, I want to say harmonics is maybe the word, right?
Maybe, yeah.
You start to end up with stuff kind of looping over each other. Now, Kyle, we might actually have time to talk about your stretchy tile. Is there anything else that I should cover of the examples before we do that? Anything else?
I mean, I think, to maybe just kind of like, some of this stuff does get a little abstract and heady, but ultimately, right. I feel like it's not that scary to think about you're creating a grid, and just making sure that the different things that you're creating can kind of line up that way spatially, right? And then while it does become a little more abstract to think about, you're doing the same thing with that retiming.
Right.
You're just kind of making sure that your numbers work in a way so that if you kind of think of, the time in that same as sort of a grid or a row of the way the time works, it's kind of the same. You just want to make sure that the numbers work out so that things, fall where you want them, or not, if that's what you're after.
Yeah. So maybe actually, you know what I'll do? Let me just show you how you would do it from scratch, right? So you've created a tile, you're putting the tile down, you are transform, fit it to the comp, then we are going to divide that scale by however many we want. I'm going to say 8 in this case so that it's new and unique and interesting. And then I'm going to just stick it up in the top corner, which you can do using the align, but I like to use the anchor point and the position and just zero both of those out to get it into the
Always
top.
Makes the math easier.
Exactly. Math is easier when you start at 0. So then we're going to use the Repetile. Now, you could use other tiling things if you so desired, but then we're just going to crank across, and we're going to go down this much.
And, of course, those numbers do have a meaning. Like, you actually can think about, okay, well, I need to take this, let's say, 200 by 200 comp that I've made, and I need 5 of them. So 5 times 200 would be 1,000 in that case. Like, you just need to kind of think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or you can just scrub it until it fills the screen. That's fine too.
So now I want this to loop. So I'm going to go layer, time, enable the time remap. I know that it loops here at 3 seconds. So I click a keyframe there. I go and remove the keyframes I do not need. Alt, click, loop out so that this will happen forever, eternal eternal tiling. So that's working out great. Big bonus marks to us for that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's time for the map. So the map is a new solid. Make it the comp size. Very important to be the comp size.
Mm-hmm.
Fill it with something you like. I'm going to say a ramp for now because gradient ramps are fun. Fill again with a mosaic. Cover it up with that mosaic, saying I would like 8 by 8 of those colors. Sharp colors is probably best, but it's not always necessary. Make sure that this is sort of in the way you want. So I'm going to say, make mine radial, please. And then we'll go like that. And now we're going to use this. I like to put it behind so you can kind of see how they work. And then, of course, we are going to use a displacement map, which you need to put on an adjustment layer. Or I prefer to put it on an adjustment layer. You could pre-compose all this stuff. You could do all kinds of stuff. So then you want time displacement from the list. You want to choose that black solid. Make sure that it's happening after effects and masks. And then you just have to dial in what this period is. So if you do like a very tiny number, so here they're offset by 0.1. Oh, it's not going to like this. Not my zero denominator ratios. Yeah. So you can see how kind of cool and smooth this feels, right? When it's like that. And now let's dial it up a little bit more. I have to stop hurting After Effects.
We've tried to talk about how math is friendly, and then After Effects is mad about our zero denominators here.
I know, jeez. I promise.
Doesn't do us the courtesy of telling us what it's trying to divide.
Yeah, by 0 is what it's doing. All right, so there we go. We've got some examples, some ways that the stuff works. Okay, now I've eaten up a lot of time, Kyle. Do we have time to get to your stretchy tile?
No, I think that's good. I'm glad that we kind of like went through that again because it is a very abstract thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like maybe what we should do is we can kind of tease my responsive grid a little bit, and then we can talk about that next week. Because this uses a lot of similar concepts, but doing something very different. So again, just as kind of a reminder, I built this little 4-corner grid here, and this is all set up so that it's all responsive. So as you'll see here, there's all that's actually being animated are these 2 sliders that just determine our percentage, and this doesn't actually show anything. So this is all that's actually being animated here, is a couple of lines, and then everything else is just kind of following along. Now I'll just kind of introduce some of these concepts because this may seem like it's scary, but it's really like pretty straightforward math. So I created 2 sliders, and of course those are just effect, expression controls, slider. It just gives you a single number that you can use to drive whatever. And so I called one of them horizontal percentage and vertical percentage. I'm using percentage here, right? So that I can go from 0 to 100. And it starts off 50, 50, right? If I change this horizontal one, you'll see, there we go. So 0 puts it there, 100 puts it here, 50 puts it right in the center. And these little strokes here, they are using some expressions on the position, but, and this is probably where I'll kind of introduce and then stop so that we can dive in next time. But so this vertical, and the horizontal and vertical, I was torn about what to name them because they kind of, like, the vertical split is a horizontal line, but it's splitting it vertically, whatever. You decide what you want. So all I had to do was take, okay, since I'm calling this a percentage, what's the height of this comp? That's what this little piece of code does. So this comp dot height times that value divided by 100, which gives you a percentage, right? And so that's going to put this line wherever that split is, wherever this number is. If I say 22, it's going to take the height of this comp times 0.22, and it's going to put it right there. And so it's pretty straightforward to kind of figure out. If you're only doing 4 quadrants here, it's pretty easy. It does get a little hairier after that. But this is the basis of this whole rig, and I think we'll save the rest for the next show where we can kind of dive into getting the responsive colors, and then more importantly, getting the photos to stay centered within those quadrants, which is still not actually that complex. You just have to sort of think through the structure of it.
All right. Well, that's a tease, folks. So that means
it is
coming to the end of the episode.
Such a tease.
Oh, and Kyle, your audio just got a lot. Maybe I have you doubled somewhere in the switcher. Maybe that's what's causing it.
That seems likely. I'm not doing anything over here.
Just getting so excited about these grids.
Yeah,
we're coming into the end of the program. So if you want to get your hands on these files, these beauteous files that we created, you can head on over to motiondesignhotline.com, a real website for real people, and enjoy those, download them, help support the show, buy a cool hat if you so desire. Maybe buy a cool T-shirt. You could buy a cool T-shirt.
Yeah, we just made T-shirts available on the site too. So if you would like a T-shirt for yourself, which lines up with all of today's tiling troubles and our tremendous tackling of tribulations.
But also, now Kyle, you're going to be at Adobe Max, right? So if people
that is true.
So if people are also going to be at Adobe Max, go say hi to Kyle, get some stickers, and make yourself known. You're going to see my face on here later in this week. We'll be talking about some very interesting things coming to Adobe video apps. So, hang out and see me then. See me later after class. But until next time, I'm Evan Abrams. Find me at EC Abrams. Find Kyle on the internet at Kylosaurus Rex. Follow us on there. Ask us questions. But until next time, stay creative, be kind to each other, and we'll see you all around the internet. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Ooh, oh.